Put you boys in my little bitty pocket, son. What's good? I don't know if that's going to interfere with it. I wanted to wait till later to start this video because I don't know if y'all can relate. But you ever go through these periods where like you're researching a bunch of different stuff, you're like things you find interesting, and it's like you go over here a little bit and then this person has a perspective on it. You digest that information. Then over here, it's been this way for me for about like about a month now with reading this Jung. And then I've been really interested in these three major perspectives as of late. The perspectives are Carl Jung's like unadulterated lessons, if you will, his the whole Jungian, I guess you'd call it philosophy, but mainly just from his mouth. I kind of preached against reading or listening to interpretations by other people. And then the other example has been like Christianity and my own personal relationship with it. I know this Rich right here, boy, full-on denim suit, Henry rifle hat, mustache. I'm only missing the dip in my lip, but don't worry, I got that. I'm going to get a can of that later. But I know people online, they get really abashed whenever you talk about Christianity. It's like, oh man, I didn't come to get preached to, blah, 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 blah. But truly, my entire life, I don't think there's been a moment where I've been in an atheist perspective whatsoever. I've said terrible things about God in fits of anger. I've tried to dispel him, if you will. There's been several times where I've tackled on this like open-minded approach, which is I'm going to digest as many things as I can with an open mind and come to this. But no matter what, no matter how down bad I get, there's always been this like guiding compass to me that shifts me back to this belief. And some would call it like an ingrained thing through childhood, because yes, I did grow up in a Christian household and I went to church a couple times, albeit like a mega church, like one of those Joel Osteen churches. Quite literally, his church was probably about 30 minutes away from my mega church I went to, and there was like baptisms with like 8 bathtubs on a stage, and they dunk you down. Come on, bring on the next group. Dunk you down, bring on the next group. We're going to get through you. We're going to get through these 5,000 baptisms today. Crazy shit like that. But none of that really stuck with me. What stuck with me was like the actual like relationship between me and him, mainly through a faith perspective. Through the perspective that when you walk through the world with this open-minded approach, all these things come at you. All these things try to infiltrate you and sway you. And it's almost like being in a boat without any oars to guide yourself. It's like being in a boat and you're just getting governed by the wind. But whenever you instill the faith into your life, and I didn't want to make this video because I've been in this, digesting all these perspectives, and it felt like I almost had a revelation this morning where I haven't really been reading the Bible. And then this morning I read the Bible, and it was like a complete synchronicity with all these things I've been like researching as of late. And it's like, I go out, I explore, and then boom, come back home. And that's kind of why I didn't want to make this video, because every single time I have these moments where I research all this stuff and then I correlate it back to my ground zero, I feel very scatterbrained. It feels like it's really hard to really navigate how to talk about it because it's still fresh in my mind. So how am I going to explain it to somebody else whenever I'm still trying to put the pieces of it all together? I just had the first image of what the complete picture looks like. Not like in terms of everything, but just like in terms of like these small little things I've been researching and then connecting them. But from this idea of proving God, proving Christianity through looking at the lens of like the esoterics and the occults, the Kabbalions, all of these things, and like how they're just subsects of Christianity, and how they realistically, if you really research and dive into them, they just prove Christianity's existence. And it kind of tackles, it ties into that quote by C.S. Lewis, where he pretty much says, like, I'm trying to remember it verbatim, but I don't think I'll be able to. In essence, the quote is, I believe in God and Christianity as if I believe that the sun rises, not because I see it, but because of it, I see everything. And I've heard this quote before, and I never really understood it. I just thought it was like mumbo jumbo. But realistically, whenever you put it in perspective and you tie it to like this whole Jordan Peterson approach to Christianity, which I don't necessarily completely agree with him, because I feel like he's kind of half-baked whenever it comes to the faith. It's like, oh, but you gotta tie it to science for it to have any sort of merit. Blah, 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 blah. He's got to make all these different connections just to say simple things. But that quote, in essence, is everything's foundationally built off of this perspective and this view of faith. And then I remember what really drew me away from Christianity, or not drew me away, but like kind of swayed me off the path, was sometime last year I was working in the construction, doing all these things, and I was heavily instilled in my faith. And it was crazy. I was listening to only Christian music. I was driving to work listening to Jesus is King on the way there and back, and I felt these feelings, and that's all a thing in its own. But then I started to view Christianity in this light of like a program that you can run on yourself. Think of it like Windows versus Mac. Windows is like this open cowboy world where you don't believe any one specific thing, and viruses can infect you at will, and you have to attach yourself to these like weird little esoteric beliefs. McAfee antivirus, I know I'm making these analogies weird, but it's like this open domain, and everybody likes it because you feel so free. But on macOS, it's impossible to penetrate the system because of a solid core belief and a solid core. Oh, you're telling me with having a Mac computer, I can't install these video games, that I can't play these games that I can play on Windows, blah, 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 blah. But you're not susceptible to these distractions, to these viruses. And that's how I viewed faith. And I started to view it as a convincing yourself of something. And instead of just like a true from the heart feeling that you connect things, I was chasing religion in a sense of like, I got to program myself so I'm not susceptible to this. Instead of like, it was all a selfish desire. It wasn't like an external acceptance, if that makes sense. So this morning, it kind of all hit me, and for the first time in a while, or for really the first time, I really feel like I've fully surrendered. And this isn't me saying that I'm about to shift up my videos, start preaching all the time. I just really wanted to share this because one of the major connections that I made was this individualization that Carl Jung talks about in his books, compared to a personal relationship with God. In the Bible, this was one of the things I read this morning, and I've read this 100 times, but I never made this connection. The Carl Jung's been really speaking to me. The human is not a statistical unit. The human is an individual that must view inside of himself. And he talks about these intuitive introverts, how as an like you see a lot of extroverts, and as an introvert, which I'm not really completely in all agreement with the concept of introvert and extrovert anyways, but it's important to put labels on these things. But Carl Jung talks about the mass amount of people we see. They think they know themselves because they can identify when they're being egotistical and when they're doing these things. Not all the time, but they can do it sometimes, right? And they think that that is self-knowledge, when in reality, self-knowledge is so... it's such a small thing that it could come down to identifying weird, really, really weird niche patterns that only you could really think of. For instance, like I have all these unique passions of mine that I combine together, like my painting, my music, my wood shop, these videos, blah, 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 blah. And I'm in my own mind, I don't think obviously other people are not making these observations for me. But I recognize how they're all, while very different mediums, audio, visual, physical, digital, while they're all these separate mediums, the creative elements, the breakthroughs, the brainstorming, it all feels the exact same in each one. And that's an example of this pattern recognition that you only recognize through your own personal inner examination. With that, the same thing correlates with religion. I read this thing in the Bible, and don't expect me to be able to quote this, Matthew 7:5, blah, blah, blah. Don't expect me to be able to quote this verbatim. But it was in the New Testament, and it was in Matthew, where Jesus is basically saying, do not go to the church in the expectation that someone will watch you and see that you're praying and be like, that's a good prayer, or that's a good person, he's going to church. Like, you're not doing it for that reason. You're not doing it for this external reason for other people to be like, hey, doing good, dog. You're doing it because it's an interpersonal relationship. And it's almost as if Jesus of course, he's not dispelling going to church or communally talking about the Lord. He is, in essence, describing it as such an interpersonal relationship, something from inside of you, an inner reasoning for it, that is where you develop. It's like the act of being like devoting yourself to God, or I guess I'm not going to try to over-explain that, is such an interpersonal thing that it's not an outwardly thing that you brag about. It's something that you just know intuitively. And I never have, as many times as I've said on the channel, or back during this period, I made TikToks about it whenever I was really in this like Christ pill phase, where I was forcing it. I remember I'm like, I sacrifice myself to you. I do blah, blah, blah. Not sacrifice myself to you, but it's like, I submit my life to the Lord. I would say these things almost as if practicing or trying to force it. But this morning, and this gets real woo-woo here, boys, so bear with me. It was almost as if it just flowed out of me in thought, not through speech. It was just like, yeah, I'm with this. I'm with this 100% now. It really makes sense. And it made sense through the correlating them through the other things. So that was just one thing that I really wanted to share. Again, I'll probably make correlations regarding this. I'm not sitting here going to be preaching 100% of the time. I mean, who knows, realistically. But it's still really fresh, and I just wanted to share this because it was a really profound thing for me this morning to correlate all these things together, especially the esoterics, which often seem as if their own separate entity to believe in. The whole Hermes and Thoth and Kabbalion, all of those lines of thinking, they really seem like their own separate thing, but they're not. And you know, the thing that pulled me out of it, I mentioned how back, and I'm going to quickly, I got to show y'all some things, and I got to be at the post office in exactly 20 minutes when they open. But that's why I haven't started a project. I'm taking this time to yap, and then I'm going to take you out in the woods, and we're going to post up that little end table that I made yesterday. But this thing that really pulled me out of it whenever I was in my Jesus is King Kanye listening phase, driving to work, listening to that album every day, I kept getting this question, and I was, again, heavily influenced not by a true intuitive feeling of faith, interpersonal, but this seems like the right thing to do. That was kind of my mindset. I was dissuaded by this thinking that, okay, I need to achieve this because it protects me. And this allowed for certain thoughts to naturally come up and dissuade me from pursuing it. For example, the major thought that came to me while I was sitting in my car eating lunch one day at the job site, that I was working, this thought just came into my head. Okay, well, if God is an omnipotent being that we can't even conceptualize, like completely rule out the idea of him being a man in heaven with a beard and blah, 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 blah. He's just like this crazy entity, orb-like thing that we can't even conceptualize, right? The thought came in my head, it's like, well, if he's this powerful thing that's nowhere near resemblance of us and our worldly desires, our worldly egos, why would an egoless, omnipotent being wish to be worshipped like a mortal king? And that was the thing that was pushing me away so hard, is it's like, why? Why would he wish to be worshipped? Why would he doesn't have any of these things? And the only concept of like worship comes through these mortal beings. It comes through these kings on earth, these people who through a show of power wish for us to worship them, so on and so forth. And I could never get over that question. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. Why? And then it hit me this morning. It's like over a year later it hit me. It's like he's not wishing to be worshipped for the reasons that my brain is thinking. Like my brain is trying to conceptualize this with my own human perspective. But what if it goes deeper than that? What if his whole thing is that we're trying to not convince ourselves, we're having this faith because it is the ultimate protection. It's that Mac OS, if you will. Nothing can penetrate it. And the only way we can do this is through consistent repetition of worship and faith and actual convincing and actual, like what some people would deem as brainwashed. I mean, that's like some of the terms these people use. But it's like he's thinking so many levels above it where we can't conceptualize this. We literally cannot conceptualize it, but in our brains, the things we can conceptualize is worship, is we can relate through our own egos. That's what we're doing. Basically, he's making us do. Not making us do, but is what's required of us. And the only way we can actually pursue it is through our own relate, like the only way we can relate, if this is making any sense. God is not doing it to us because he wants something out of it. He's doing it to protect us, and the only way we can conceptualize that is through our own like worship, because that's what we desire in a sense. I feel like I'm making sense here. It's not like I'm saying that we all want to be desired and we want to be worshipped and we all want to be kings, because we can put aside our ego. A lot of us can. But it's like that's the language that we're used to speaking. So for us to have a complete faith and a shield against evil and a compass, if you will, that's how it has to be done. It has to be done through a worldly worship type thing. And yeah, I don't know if I just fucking dropped the ball on that explanation, but to me that's what makes sense. We have to do it through our own way. But anyway, to quit rambling, to quit distracting from what I really wanted to show y'all today, come with me, boys, and I'll show you what my grandpa has been up to. I mentioned he went to a garage sale while I sat and I built this table in here, which I got to blow it off. It got dusty. But I built this table. He went to these garage sales, and he found these carts. Now, these are General Electric hospital bassinets for whenever a baby is born, right? And this is a toolbox my uncle made like a long time ago. And I organized it all and got it all looking right with all of the mechanic tools. But he found these carts, these 2 carts. He got them for $25 a piece, because apparently when some hospital was like upgrading or something, he managed to buy 100 of them. And my grandpa met this guy, and then he sold them for $25 a piece. So he bought 2 of them. I made one into a welding cart for my wire feed MIG welder. I got some tools in it, some gloves, some hammers, some extra stuff, my wires, some grinding discs. So that's nice, and they roll like a dream. Like, it's crazy. These wheels alone are worth, it's hard as shit to do with one hand. These wheels alone are worth $25. And then took all the drawers out, mounted the actual cabinet itself to the top. Fits perfectly. It's like crazy how well it fits. I haven't added nothing in it, but these drawers, they open each way, so it's pretty neat. Got a little file holder on it, and I got to mount this later, but that's one of the things he did. And then the other thing that he got, and it's kind of cluttered, I cleaned this whole area out, and then I cleaned his side-by-side out, so it's all cluttered in here, but he found a Coca-Cola machine that guy literally gave to him for free. So we got that out, got to clean it, pressure wash it. It don't work or plug in, but he's going to make an incubator out of it, so that'll be pretty neat. But yeah, and then we finished his bird cages last night, so now he's ready to put some quail in it, and I'm going to be getting me like 10 or 11 chickens next month whenever the flea market near town comes on. Go in there, because, bro, the price of a 60 pack of eggs in Walmart is literally like $20 now. It went down to 12, now it's back up to fucking 20. So let me show you what we're going to be doing here in a minute. Again, I don't think that rustic thing would work on like a black backdrop like how I post most of my items. So I got this area over here. This is where he used to have his hot house, and his chickens. Hailstorm destroyed it, and he kind of abandoned it. And then we got, oh damn, I just ate a spider web. We got all these fridges I gotta take to the scrapyard too. But I'm gonna go ahead and clear out a little area in there so it won't, like the grass won't cover it up, and then go ahead and post that in pictures and then head to the post office. So let's get on this. I'm gonna be patient, because in about 3 minutes, that sun, from doing my little, what's that, Archimedes shit, looking at the sun, looking at my compass, deciphering the sun and the stars, it looks as though where I just put it, where I cut that patch, the sun should shine right there. And my idea, I can't even fucking see my phone right now. This shit's in my eyes so bad. But my idea is that to have like this rustic look, like dilapidated look with grass all grown up, and then in the center of the field, in this beautiful, bathed in the light of the heavens, is this end table that I created. So I'm gonna get that, and then about, well, it's already 9:30, so that post office place is open now. So I'm gonna get this shit done, and then we'll be on the road, boys. We're on the way to the post office with the package, boys. I ended up, after I got off the camera and I posted that stand, one of my buddies called me, and we ended up having like a fucking hour-long conversation about this shit. And it's pretty interesting, like, because I've been in my little bubble this morning with this religion shit in general, and I just hopped on there, and then he added in his perspective, which is a little bit more of like a Joe Rogan approach to things, where it's like, our brain is the size of can fit in a bucket. How the fuck can we know anything? We don't know anything besides our own experience, and so on and so forth. That line of thinking, which I've been in a lot in the past. But it's like, I just keep coming back to like, what's a better existence? What's a more peaceful, practical, productive existence? Me being open to all these ideals and exploring all these territories, and it feels so good, and these neurons or whatever in my brain are clicking and clacking from these different perspectives and things. Or to like, and I'm not saying I'm gonna close myself off. I'll still read these philosophical people. I'll still read these things. I'll still try to gain outside perspective and stuff. I'm not one of those Christians where you're just gonna like close yourself off to everything. I mean, ideally that'd probably be the best thing, but I'm just not able to do that just yet. But again, it just goes back to like more structure. And I was researching this like numerology shit a while back, inspired by that Zerka dude, and it's really crazy. Like, I ain't sitting here saying that I believe in that shit by any means, or astrology or anything like that. But it was kind of interesting, like correlations and similarities with that. It's like, apparently I'm a life path 4, which is like militant law, structure, discipline. You thrive through structure and discipline. And it's like, that does kind of sum me up. And then to play around with it, I'm like, well, let me look up what is this? I've been really into like this Jimmy DiResta dude that's like a maker, and he makes all these different things and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what is he? And it's like, he's a 3, a creative. And it's like, huh. And then it's like, well, what is Rick Rubin? I started playing with this shit, and I looked it up, and it's like, apparently Rick Rubin's birthday makes him a 6, which is like a counselor life path, and you're like super relatable and friendly, and everybody can talk to you, and you give them advice. And it's like, that's literally his entire fucking job description. He doesn't play the music or anything engineering wise. So it was just weird. And then I thought about it, and it's like, well, maybe if I am, again, getting a little esoteric here, I ain't on all this woo-woo shit completely. But if I am a 4, it would make the most sense to just silence all that shit. But anyway, boys, for the remainder of this video, I'm gonna go get this post office shit dealt with, and then come back. I got a project I want to start in the shop. Might finish it today, but we'll see. Clean up a little bitty area in there, and then I got to do some more painting practice, get this video uploaded, and then do a little more reading. And one last thought that I wanted to leave y'all with was this, for right now at least, was this idea. I can't remember or not if I remembered it, but my friend was like trying to tell me, he was like, I just like don't like the fact that the book's been rewritten blah 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 many times and losing the things, and you got to do this and you got to do that, and like the community aspect of like it just seems like a cult. And I remember like 2 years ago, my stepdad's uncle, not very close at all to that whole side of my family, but he's like a deacon in a Catholic church. So I go to the church, right? And it seems very culty. It's very, very weird to me. Like all the like little rituals, stand here, bow here, do this, do that, everyone in unison. I was not feeling it at all. I've never felt more disconnected than religion than I did in that church, which is absurd and kind of a weird thought on its own. And through reading this Carl Jung individualization, and then the thing I read in the Bible this morning in the New Testament, which was basically highlighting you don't do religion so other people, you don't pray so other people see you pray. You go into a closet and you pray. It was something like that. I can't again remember it verbatim, but that was super powerful to me. Where it was like this stuff really is I think I mentioned this earlier, but it's like such an individual thing. Your relationship to it and your reasonings for it, and just that perspective in a whole has been really, really helpful. Anyway, boys, I'll catch y'all in a little while. I feel like we're so afraid, at least been in my experience, to surrender. And even in essence, I don't think I've ever really truly understood what that meant. Whenever I was younger and I got baptized and I fell into it and went to church every day, I was just wanting to get back to my fucking video game at home. All right, let's go ahead and get this over with. Oh, I got some chills. It feels pretty cool. Blah, blah, blah. You don't understand the gravity to it. And that's where I feel like the disconnect with like the mass, unpersonal approach to it loses people. But truly, it is the biggest decision you ever get to make. Like, quite literally, it is completely changing. And I know I'm pandering in this video a lot to the skeptics by using all of these analogies, all of this verbiage of it's really like this and it's like this, but realistically, it is a complete change in your mindset, in your life. Truly, it is in every essence of the word a surrendering, and that's what we're afraid of. We're afraid to abandon these numerous things that we can think about, these numerous possibilities, these numerous theories. You feel like there's this thing between science and religion that you're having to abandon one for the other. When quite literally, when you surrender, God created this. He created this ability to theorize what is. He created the science. And a good way to explain it would be these. I saw this video a long time ago about this like atheist, 94, 95, in his 90s, 90-year-old atheist, about to die. He's got a caretaker in the home, and he's been like an atheist writer his entire life. And it's like he had gained confidence of like there's meaning to nothing and that's okay. Just that sort of thing. And he starts panicking towards the end. And this video is just detailing his like ending life with just like full of despair and like not knowing. So imagine that end in your life. Then imagine the confident end in your life, where you are completely surrendered to this, to Jesus, to God. You have 100% undying belief. You're happy to die. Not in a sense of you would like in a suicidal sense, but you're happy to die because you accomplished what you set out to do. For one, you had your life, whether you created children or what, that's one of my goals. You accomplished all these things, or at least you tried to. And at the very end, now you get to see the true fruits of your labors. Are you going to be, when you get judged, and whenever you accept this faith, There is no skepticism if you did the right thing, if you truly believed, if you truly surrendered. There is no what ifs. I've seen several people pass away. I've seen young people pass away while working with some fire department people. Just last year, I saw a kid that was 17 years old. He was 17. He was like 3 months away from graduate. He had just graduated 3 months out of high school, and he drowned trying to impress these two girls trying to swim across this little channel in this lake nearby my house. They put this thumper machine on him, and it was pumping him. It was like pop, 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 super violent looking. Those are the things, when you see crazy shit like that, that's the things that make you become a skeptic. Because you're like, how could a God make things like this happen? What the hell? But then you see several other examples. I've seen several people die. My grandma that passed away, I held her hand and I felt her pulse stop. It was just something in my head that just like made me do that. That really messed me up for a while, but it was peaceful. She wasn't a skeptic. She made mistakes, but she was full on a believer her entire life. And I think I didn't get to talk to her before the end, because by the time I had gotten up here to see her go, she was one of my best friends, but she had told my grandpa, "The Lord is by my side. I do not need to fear." And then within the next couple of days, she was completely sedated, and I never got to talk to her again. But it was a much more peaceful ending. It was a better resolve, if you will. And there's something to that. Not just in a selfish sense, because when you surrender, it is the antithesis to the selfish-minded. That's like that Joe Rogan thinking, where it almost comes off as if they're confused about what they're trying to believe or what they believe in. It is not a questioning. It is not a comparison. It is none of these things. It is just 100% acceptance. Surrendering in every essence of the word, my boy. Bro, it's been so nice these past like 3 or 4 days. You saw me this morning, I was wearing a jacket because it was so cold outside, but it's no shop fans on in here. No, one of the doors closed. It's chill. I just keep contemplating this all day long about like back and forth in my head, and I've come to the consensus of the problem that dissuades most people away from the Christian idea as a whole, and that is this whole idea that we have to dismantle an atheist perspective. This whole idea of, oh, I'm this now, so I got to dismantle and one up these other people. Speak your mind, speak your opinions, but detach from this like narcissistic view that so many have of let me try to get a Gotham on them. What about that? Like, I know I've kind of said a lot of these in this video, but it's like, I don't care about arguing with someone who has a belief. I mean, there's literally a Carl Sagan, who's like an atheist. There's a quote from him that's like, you can't convince a believer of anything, because realistically, their true belief is in the desire to believe in something. Or it goes something like that. And it's the epitome of the perpetual cycle, if you will, of this constant back and forth Gotham. And it's like, who cares, bro? Like, I'll talk to the people I know that like this. I'll listen to other people's opinions, but I'm not going to sit here and get swayed anymore or get upset over the fact of like a Gotham type thing. It's just pointless. I mean, you get nowhere. If people are receptive and open to these things, they'll be receptive and open. But I've said so many times, this crazy realization that I had from making online videos, people are going to hate what they want. You're not going to convince anybody of anything. There's people, I've said this, there's people who probably don't like this type of pliers or the color red or this watch I'm wearing or literally anything you could think of. There's a group of people that probably will hate on it and disagree or try to troll or try to get in the middle of things. And for you to try to red pill other people consistently on your rhetoric, it's ridiculous. You get nowhere besides just confusion, because you're always trying to question things instead of being solidified in your opinion. You're always trying to consider this to make a relatable argument against it and so on and so forth. And it's just kind of pointless. Again, like I said, I don't think believing in Christianity alienates you from exploring other possibilities, other ideas. It's like wearing a pair of sunglasses now. You're experiencing all of these things through a particular lens, through a particular perspective. And I've really been enjoying this John Lennox approach to things, about like how God created science, and that's like the meaning, and his whole philosophy on there is no reason to need to have evidence at all. We don't have evidence of numerous things, and yet you still believe. And this is, I just recently watched this thing, so I'm not completely familiarized with it yet, but he said this thing of, we don't necessarily need, he frames this perspective that seeing actually being like, oh wow, this is what, that seeing is only one kind of evidence to form a belief around, and that Jesus did not say that blessed are those who see, who believe that do not have evidence. And my interpretation of that is basically, when you say seeing is only one kind of evidence, well, there's so many others. There's actual pattern recognition. And this goes back into that Carl Jung thing with an individual going deep into yourself. It's in the sense of, wow, I kind of notice all these similarities kind of revolving around that. I haven't seen him in the flesh. I haven't seen a lot of these things, but man, there's a lot of coincidences. There's lots of synchronicities, if you will. There's lots of, it kind of spans across. It's noticing these things that are kind of based on the belief, the good, the this and that. But again, I want to make this very clear in my own opinions here. I find absolutely no reason to sit here and argue with somebody who does not wish to see, does not wish to believe, does not wish to do anything but point out how stupid everything I've been saying is. Because it's as pointless as saying, oh wow, you're a painter? That's gay. I would never do that. It's that level of like, okay, well, what am I supposed to say to that, dog? Like, you don't like it. I'm not going to sit here for 5 hours and try to convince you why painting is cool or why woodworking is cool and why I like it. It's a personal thing between me. And again, just like I talk about, and then you'll be like, well, why are you sharing it online? Why are you trying to tell other people about it? Just like I share this woodworking thing, just like I share these things, and I have belief in doing them and pursuing them. It's like an intuitive feeling that's hard to explain to other people who have never seen it. And when you do this, and you're also interested in the philosophy and the science of things, you're ostracized from talking about it because we don't like saying these things, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, boys, we're about to get on this build. I've yapped enough.